the Carolina Panthers, they're 2-13, eliminated. And the worst part about this is the team with the worst record in the NFL does not own their own first-round pick, so that's going to the Bears.
Yeah. Another one where I think the biggest cause of death is the offensive line. Now, there would be an interesting argument to be made that the cause of death is the meddling billionaire, but I think when you looked at this team...
That's understood, though, for every team.
When you looked at this team heading into the season, it's like, okay, they made the move for Bryce Young. You kind of need Bryce Young to be good, but the rest of this roster, receiving core is a problem. They traded away DJ Moore to make it happen. That's a concern. They didn't do a great job of backfilling that. They didn't find another move to make happen. A new Compkins, for example. They didn't do that. They went with what they had. But the supposition, I think, that was the most wrong from everybody was that offensive line looked okay. And then it hit we hit the regular season, and it was immediately apparent that actually it's not okay at all. In fact, it's a train wreck. And, former first-round pick Ike Ekwonu has taken a huge step backwards. Like, there's been guys missing. Austin Corbett hasn't been there. Like, they haven't necessarily had the starting five that they wanted. But 4 out of the 5 linemen on that unit have been bad from basically start to finish.
In hindsight, yeah, it looks bad. But if we came into the season, I mean, there's probably a clip of me in the thousands and thousands of hours that we have recorded, that if you assume a year 2 jump from Ike Ekwonu, that he's going to play a little bit better. Taylor Mouton has been one of the better right tackles, consistent right tackles in the league.
Yeah, he's been one out of the 5 that's been good.
Those are your tackles. And you just mentioned an injured Austin Corbett and Bradley Bozeman as 2 other starters. Those 2 are like the epitome of creep back to our average
that's
type
what I'm saying.
of players, right?
This
so
line
4 out of 5
shouldn't
looked
have been
reasonable.
Yeah, it shouldn't have been bad, but it is.
But it's been horrendous. And then I also, optimistic Steve, in the offseason, could have said, I kind of get it with the receiving core. You gave up DJ Moore, and look, I know Adam Thielen's not the same that he used to be, but he'll play my most common reference.
Thielen's been good.
He's been good. He'll play late career Reggie Wayne. I didn't know they were going to move him in the slot necessarily, but he'll play, dependable guy while you have the 1-year flyer on DJ Chark. They just brought him in for 1 year just to be a receiver.
If they drafted Puka Nacua or Tank Dell instead of Jonathan Mingo, right, how different would that situation be right now?
It would probably feel different.
I'm not saying Mingo has no shot in future. I still like Mingo's talent and his skill set, but it became – so a lot about this Carolina team, there was the offseason sort of discussion, the Bryce Young thing, and then there was those few months, right, where you kind of look at the lay of the land now, right? Free agency's done, the draft's done, post-free agency, post-draft, the roster is complete. Now let's look on paper what this should be going into the season. When you did that, there were a lot of things that were different in the season, and it became very clear very quickly that we just had it wrong from the on-paper analysis, right? In preseason, that offensive line looked terrible. And obviously preseason is preseason, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but that was one of the things that did mean something. You looked at multiple plays, and you're like, guys, this Panthers offensive line might stink. And if it does, that's an issue. The line was terrible. And then the other thing that became clear very quickly was Jonathan Mingo is not going to be an immediate success. Like, all the way, again, through preseason, there was a ton of plays where him and Bryce Young are not on the same page, and it didn't look like Bryce Young's fault, right? So I think Mingo can still be a productive player and a guy that has success in future, but it wasn't going to happen right away. Like, he's mentally behind the 8 ball. Now, the concern is other players that's been true for recently have never come back. I mean, that was a problem for Sky Moore last year, and he stinks at the moment. So I don't know if that's an indication that it's never going to be there for Mingo. But the point being, it was obvious pretty quickly that he wasn't going to be a year 1 contributor or in any serious manner. But those were out there in the draft, right? And those are actually not that hard to find if you look throughout the draft these days. So if they had drafted a Tank Dell, or a Puka Nacua or any of these mid-round receivers that actually have immediate success, how much different would the situation look?
That's why you have to, I think, draft in volume. You draft high-value positions in volume. A Packer strategy that we've talked about before. There's been multiple.
Dontavian Wicks.
Yeah.
What if they drafted Dontavian Wicks?
Right. Like the Packers just forever have had years where they've drafted 2 or 3 corners, 2 or 3 receivers. And sometimes the 4th rounder is better than the 2nd rounder, or the 5th rounder is better than the 3rd rounder. It happens. And so to me, that's the thing, right? Once you trade DJ Moore, once you give up all that draft capital, it's going to take time to rebuild the assets to go build around Bryce Young. So it was always going to be a step back, I think, for the roster around Bryce Young before it goes forward. Now, again, it's the extra, the extra pain of you would have had the number 1 overall pick again this year. But they've got to battle back and build that receiving core, find pass catchers. Tight end has not been good. There's nothing for the future that feels good about Carolina's offense, basically.
Yeah.
And so all of that, I think, is the cause of death here.
Yeah, I mean, my point with that is the receivers are bad, but I think there might have been ways out of that, whereas the offensive line, that's the thing that underlies all this. I mean, you look at that list again that I keep coming back to, the pass blocking efficiency, Carolina are 29th. So the Titans, the Jets, the Giants, all of whom eliminated, the Panthers are the next team on that list. The offensive line is the underlying cause of all of this. It's why Bryce Young doesn't look good. I think the receivers would probably look better if the offensive line was better. And I think that receiving core might have been salvaged with like the process, right, of Mingo. Reasonably high draft pick to try and salvage that receiving group might have worked out if they just drafted a different guy, right? And obviously you have to hit the right one, and you get lucky sometimes. Like the Rams liked Puka Nacua, but
yeah, of course, there's luck in the 5th round.
Yeah,
getting him there, or even Tank Dell in the 3rd, right? If Tank Dell's a couple inches taller, he's early 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, I love Tank Dell, but you need to get lucky enough that he slides to that spot or a spot low enough that you can take him.